Good morning. Really? Let me try again. Good morning.
Good morning.
I know we're in Norway, but you can still say hello. Are you all awake? Yeah. Right. I'll try and wake you up a little bit. I got up at 5 just to make sure I'm awake for this. So welcome to this IntelliJ Tips and Tricks. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people that have shown up. Thank you very much. Hopefully you will learn something new today. If you've ever seen any of these sessions that I do in the past, there's going to be a lot of repeat stuff. So if you have seen this, go away now. But don't give me a red card saying I didn't learn anything new. Also, given that there's so many different people in the audiences with different levels, etc., it's very hard to make sure that everybody learns something. So as I always say, I set the bar for myself very low. As long as you learn 3 new things, I'm happy. Okay? At that point, you're also welcome to leave once you learn those new 3 things. Having said that, how many of you actually use IntelliJ? Okay. Anybody here that is not using IntelliJ? Couple of people, right. So my goal is that you don't walk out of here deciding to switch IDEs. If I do that, then we've kind of failed. Having said that, I also want to, I rearranged this, I've done this a little bit in the past, I've rearranged it a little bit just to be more nervous. To add to that, I've also decided to use IntelliJ 15, which isn't released yet. It's in EAP. So, you know, if it crashes, if I do something wrong and crashes, I can blame the team, not myself. So, having said that, if you do see awkward things, it's not me, I promise you. I'm using the latest EAP available. I normally don't use the white background. I normally program in the dark background, but for presentation reasons, I use the light one. I hope that you can more or less see the font size there, although we won't be really looking at much code itself. Before I start, one thing, this is the settings. I'm using a Mac, as you can tell, although I'm trying to get this to work on the new iPad Pro that they released. So the keyboard mapping that I'm using is 10.5 plus. If you're not using that, switch right now. That's the one you should be using on OS X. I'm also using another thing that is called Presentation Assist, right? Under plugins, if you go to browse repositories, there's a plugin called Presentation Assist. And what that does is that every time I type a key, what happens is that it displays at the bottom there. Okay? So that's very good for 2 reasons. 1, presentation. 2, when you're sitting with a colleague and they say, "What key did you press?" You say, "Shut up, look at the screen." Stop interrupting my flow. When I type, you can configure this to show basically 2 different keyboard mappings. So I'm showing the 10.5 plus, and on Windows I'm using the default, which is Win Linux. So if you're using Win Linux, you can see that in the brackets, right? So you can see Control-Alt-S for what I just pressed there. Also, if you come from Windows, when I press Command-N, Command-O in the default keyboard mapping for Windows, that will be Control-N. So every time I write O, you think N. And that only works for Command-O. But nonetheless, think about it. Okay, so let's start. I want to show you a bunch of different things. I'm going to show you some things around navigation. We'll see refactoring. We'll see code inspection, IntelliSense, analysis, working with data, a whole bunch of things. And hopefully you will pick up something new. Now, anybody been using IntelliJ more than 5 years? More than 10? 9.5, right? 10. Wow. Okay, 15? If you have, leave. Seriously, you probably know more than me. So, first we're going to start with navigating to type, right? So Commando, I go to a type. You all know this. I can write, for example, operation, time interval, and it takes me to operation time interval, right? That's nothing new. OTI also does the same thing. So camel case completion takes me exactly to the type without me having to type all of that things. And this works exactly the same way for files. So Shift Command O is the same thing, and if I write scheduler, it takes me to files. I can also do file paths. So for example, I could do RX, and that would show me all of the folders, right? So you can also not only navigate to files, you can also navigate to folders. And then all of this, of course, also takes wildcards. So I could do something like that, and it would show me all of that, or put this in the front, and it would show me everything that is operation in the front. And if it doesn't work, don't blame me. Now, also what you can do is if you go to a file, for example, you could do scheduler and then write 40, and what that does, as you can imagine, is take you to line 40 of that file. Okay, so you can do that directly. Symbol lookup, so that's type lookup and file lookup. Symbol lookup is also efficient because it allows you to basically search for a symbol across the entire solution, right? So I can do, for instance, sum float, or I could do index, and that will basically show me all of the different indexes that exist anywhere inside my entire project, which is a pain in the rear, because there's a lot of indexes here. So if I do, for instance, sum float, there's also a lot of sum floats. You can see that this is green. I don't know if you can actually, yeah, you can see that it's green, so that shows me the test ones. So what happens if I want to go to sum float, but I know more or less where, in what namespace it is? You can do namespace filtering, so you can do, for example, OST sum float, and that will take me to the type OST, which is operation sum test, and then to the met symbol only inside that. So you can actually filter by namespace. Okay, how many of you knew that? Brilliant, that's one. Okay. Cool. This is going to be easy. No, I'm joking. So, if you don't want to use any of these symbol lookups to search for things, you can do it the old-fashioned way and go to find in path, which you would only do this if you're using an editor, right? So, for instance, I could say sum float, and notice that inside IntelliJ 15, we already have a preview window here. Right? So you don't actually have to navigate to it. You can actually see it in the preview, right? Without having to close the dialog box and invoke it. Now, again, don't search like that unless your life depends on it. What else? So double shift gives you search everywhere. You know this? Okay. So search everywhere is basically search for anything everywhere, absolutely anything. So I could do operation time interval again here, and it will also show me operation time no, there isn't. Operation take time whatever, and it will show me a type. I can tab and go to, well, that's file, right? I can tab, go to classes, tab, go to more, tab again, go to files, and go through all of the different sections. But it searches not only for types and files, etc. It searches anything. So for instance, if I say presentation assist, you can see that it shows me, for example, plugins down here, actions, toggle presentation mode, everything. So things that you don't know where they are, you can basically look them up in Search Everywhere. Search Everywhere also allows you to do history, so you can press left arrow key and get history. If you press right arrow key, you just move forward. Okay, so there's no history moving forward. Now, you can use Search Everywhere basically for looking up types, files, etc. We optimized it drastically in IntelliJ 14 so that basically it gives you the same speed as looking up a type. Some people prefer to narrow it down to type. I, out of custom, normally just use Command O to look for types. As you can see in 15, there have been some issues in performance, which we've got to get back to. Right. Also, what you can do here is if I do, for example, person debugger here, you can see that, or default, you can see that I have the default package run configuration, right? So I could actually hit enter here and run this without having to go to the mouse and hit it there. If I press the shift, you can see that the debug turns into a run. Okay? So really you can use this for anything. If you don't know where something is, just look it up in Search Everywhere. One thing that I try and recommend is when you're learning IntelliJ or when you're using IntelliJ, try and not use the mouse at all. Unplug it, destroy it, smash it. Just use the keyboard. Right? And as you can see, I'm not using a mouse here. Touchpad doesn't count, and it's only for demo purposes. But really, pretty much we've designed IntelliJ so that anything you want, you can pretty much do with the actual keyboard and not have to rely on the mouse so much. Now, if you notice something here, as I change types, go to a bunch of different ones, does anybody notice anything in my IDE? Apart from it's very small right now. I'll give you a hint. It's what? It's shaking. That's the screen. Oh. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's synced, yes. And I'll tell you about that in a second. No, I don't have tabs. You notice I don't have tabs? I don't use tabs. In fact, what I'll show you with tabs is I'll go to tabs and show you what I do with tabs. I always switch them off, right? You don't need tabs, trust me. It's horrible. So we have bug reports in our... we have bug reports that say... Where's my tabs gone? Yeah, so there's bug reports that say, if I open up 60 tabs, they jump. You don't open up 60 tabs. I'm sorry, you just don't do things like that. Okay, so that will not be fixed, hopefully. Really though, you don't need tabs. In IntelliJ, you don't need tabs. Tabs are probably the most inefficient way of navigation. Really, they are. So why do you want tabs open? Because if you have multiple tabs, what you're going to end up doing is having to use the mouse to go back and forth through the tabs. You can number them, you can put mnemonics, you can do whatever you want, you can color code them. No, don't do that. You know how to navigate with the types, but more importantly, if I double-click search everywhere, you see what it shows up? It says recent files. By default, it shows recent files. Command E is your friend. Command E is recent files. So it shows you the recent files you've been to. If you hit Command E, Enter, it will toggle back and forth between the two files you've been to. Shift Command E shows you recent edited files. So you can pinpoint down to the actual files you've been editing. Command left square brackets, Command right square brackets, navigate back and forth through where you are. On each of these windows, you can also search. If I go navigate to test, I can search through that. Right? Just like the project window. If I go to the project window, which you get to, by the way, with Command 1, open and close, right? I can also search here. I can do extract delegate here. I can search everywhere. I don't need tabs. Just use the power of the navigation that IntelliJ gives you, and don't take up all of that messy tabs in your workflow, in your screen. It really is horrible, really. I'm not passionate about tabs. So one of the things that you were mentioning is on the project, you can see that as I change files here, for example, operation preferences, and there you go. Well, that's not part of the project. But as I change, you see that it syncs here. Now, you can make this sync. It doesn't actually, but it can sync. So you can select auto scroll to source or auto scroll from source. And basically what this means is that when I change to a source file, it will scroll for me on the project window. When I change from the project window to the source file, it will auto change. I don't have auto scroll to source enabled. I don't really like it. I do have auto scroll from source. So I always know where I am in the project window when I navigate to a different file. If you're in the actual project window and you can go, for example, to a type, where is everything? Oh yeah, you do have to expand this for it to actually work, which is a major... Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Operation... Oh, there you go. So that's an actual little bug. I'm going to close this so it doesn't confuse me anymore for now. Right. So operation timeout, and I come here. You can see that it doesn't scroll, right? I can hit escape and then focus on the actual browser, hit Command 1 again, get out of the browser, or hit F4 and open the window and get the cursor directly in there. Okay, so my recommendation is do auto scroll to source, but don't do auto scroll from source. It works better and the flow is a little bit better. Any questions? Nope, good. Seriously, any questions? Okay. Are you actually learning something? Yes or no? Okay, good. So, right. What else? Right. So creating new files, you never do this. You never go file new. No, you don't. What you do is you come here and you press Command N, and from there you create the file, right? And you can say, for example, I don't know, a package or whatever. By the way, don't ever do this either. Watch. I don't come here and I say, or let me do it outside of source, so you see it. So, for example, come here, and I'm going to say directory ABC. Directory DEF. Don't do that. Do you do that? Yes? Anybody? No? Stop doing it if you do. You do directory GHI, JKL, MNOP, and it does it for you, right? And you can do the same with files. So I can say, for example, file, blah, 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 test.txt, and it will create it for me as well, okay? That's how you try and create files, folder structures, directories, etc. And if you're inside an actual file, you can also access that new menu. You just invoke it in a different keyboard combination, and you can also create the new files directly from there, right? One thing that we've also added is where's my Scratch files. Have you heard of Scratch files? Scratch files are basically files that you get rid of after you've worked with them. So they don't form part of the project. Sometimes you want to just open up a new file to do some HTML testing or something. You can create a Scratch file, and then once you've done with it, you just close it off and it goes away. Okay? Now, you can see that I don't have a lot of real estate here, right? My window here is at the bottom. If I bring up, like, for example, I don't know, let's say the log, or let's bring it up here. You can see that I'm using the mouse nicely. Version control. So a lot of times, especially people that come from editors, they come to IntelliJ and they're like, how the hell am I meant to write code in that? You don't, right? There's no real estate there. You have to hide all the windows, okay? And you can hide all the windows with a quick shortcut, Shift Command F12, and that basically goes back to what you had and what you didn't have. And then you can also hide these icons here. You see when I do Shift Command F12, these panels are still available. I can hide these, and they're gone as well, right? And then if I want to go back to the previous mode I was, easily get in and out. I could do double click on the command key and also get the windows back, let go, and lose them. If you don't like that, what you can also do is enter what we call distraction-free mode, which basically gets rid of absolutely everything, and you just get the editor, okay? You can still access stuff, but otherwise everything else is gone. There's also another mode which is similar, but it's called presentation mode. The difference is that that is very much more for presentations that enlarge everything and make it big, and as you can see, it's so great that I never use it. I don't know, I just don't use it. Okay, now working with actual code, let's go to outside of tests. We don't like tests, do we? Go away. Oh, by the way, I said that you can do everything with the keyboard shortcut. In fact, you can even resize windows without using the mouse, okay? So I'm here. How do you select code in IntelliJ? Come on, people, be interactive. Control W, yes, or Command W. No, that closes. And that's why we called it 10.5 plus, because we pissed off a lot of Mac users. So on Mac, what you do is you press Alt Up, and that selects the word. And this is context aware. So now it selects the line, and then it will select the method, and then the class, and then the entire outer class, and then the entire package, right? And you could shrink as well. If you place the cursor on an empty line, you just press Command Up, Alt Up. Oh, this is, sorry, this is, let's try it on here. And that selects the entire line. If you want to move code, you don't do cut and paste, right? You actually use the functionality we have to move code around and place it in places that are awful and won't compile. If by accident you do something like this, Control X, and then you come down here and press Control V, instead of pressing Control V, you press Control X again, you've just lost your keyboard, your clipboard. What you do is you do Shift Command V, and you get your clipboard back. Okay, you get all the entire clipboard history. Okay, and then select it again and put it where it belongs. If you want to delete a line, just press Control Y. Well, it should be Command Y. If you want to duplicate a line, press Control D. Okay, so that's how you move code around, and don't do those sort of horrible copy-paste stuff things that sometimes people do. Okay, we also introduced another thing in IntelliJ, which is support for multiple cursors. So I can press the cursor here, and then I can press another cursor here, and I can press another cursor here, and I can mess things up really badly. Okay? Now, don't please use this for refactoring. Don't. Right? There are many built-in refactoring tools, but sometimes you need multiple cursors. You also have the ability to select a word So I can, if I place my cursor on scheduler, keep pressing it, and I get all of the instances of scheduler and mess those up as well. And you also have the ability to basically select all of the words scheduler. Yes.
Because often, if I need to rename schedulers, I often use multiple cursors because if I do the rename, it ends up doing a full project scan and takes ages. Because it's multiple cursors, I just select all the current of the words, fix it, and then mix together.
But
Not the class, the variable, which is local to this file.
yeah, but you should be able to do the refactoring in scope as well. Okay, we'll see that when we get to refactoring. So yeah, also control command, it should be control command G will select all of the scheduler words, okay, and get multiple cursors there. And of course, you can also do a copy and a paste with multiple cursors as well, okay? Now, if you want to get the full power of editors like Vim, you can also install a plugin which is called Idea Vim. How many of you use it? So Idea Vim gives you the ability to basically plugins, and then go to install JetBrains plugin, Idea Vim, right? And now you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get all of the navigation that is semantically aware of the project, and then you also get all of the features that Vim provides you with the ability to work with actual text. Once you install it, don't call us if you don't know how to exit, because that tends to happen with Vim. Also, often people install it and they're like, I can't type anywhere anymore in my IDE. I don't personally use it. People do. More or less, they say it's okay. If you want to clean up code, so for instance, let's go and find something that I could element at. Let's go to, not that one. I think I messed this up recently. Anyway, okay, so look at this. This is horrible code, right? That really looks horrible. And if I just want to get the indentation right, what I can do is basically just select that and then hit Control-Alt-I to get the indentation done. If I want to reformat the entire code, so I could just do, be anywhere and then just do Alt-Command-L and reformat the entire code. So again, don't spend too much time reformatting code manually, right? The code cleanup, all of these do it. So cleanup code cleanup basically allows you to clean up the entire project without you having to do it. One thing that we introduced, and when you're doing code cleanup, of course, you need to define your code style. So I can come, for instance, to Java here and define my code style, which I can manage. I can import, export, share between projects. And if you've really got nothing better to do in your life, you can go through all of these options and define your different code styles. The only thing that I do recommend, and having come from .NET and C#, I find it horrendous that I have to import every symbol manually in Java, or that there's an import automatically. And in fact, Kevlin was here last year giving a talk, and he asked this question, like, why on Stack Overflow, if you go and you say, why in Java do you import each symbol manually, explicitly? And the top answers were, any good IDE will take care of it for you, which isn't the actual answer to the question, right? Nobody knows. Well, somebody knew. It was called Swing, but apart from that, let's forget it. So what you can actually do here is say, convert imports. As soon as I have 2 or more imports, convert them to import star, and it will also do that for you while doing auto import or while doing code cleanup. Right. Now, this is one way of defining all of this. The other way that you could do it is you could basically, this is something new that we've introduced in 15. You can select some code, and I'll show you how to select it faster. Just go to the method name, select it, and the Alt-Enter allows me to do adjust code styles, right? So I can hit Enter, and then I get this code style window, and as I actually select things, it shows me what it's going to look like. And then I can apply that, or I can save it. So, setting code styles in place based on a section of code. Do you like that? Yes, but just continue to not show any emotion whatsoever. We're all good. We're all good. It's really, really, really motivating me. So let's go back up here and let me see what I can show you. What do we have here? Okay. What do I have here? Right, new Java class. Bada bing. Okay, string. String. Now, you've got to forgive me, I don't normally write too much Java. I'm mostly Kotlin nowadays, but anyway. Let's write some JSON. We all love to write JSON, right? So here we go. Name. Sorry. No. Did I get, is that, oh, okay. That's cool. No? How many of you do that? Brilliant. Well, then I'm not going to show you how to do it properly. I mean, if none of you do that, fine. The other way to do this is, how many of you use language injections in IntelliJ? So what you can do here is you can say Alt-Enter and inject language and say JSON. And now that string, IntelliJ interprets it as JSON. And I can come back here and JSON. And I should be able to come back and get the JSON editor, edit JSON, and now here I can write JSON. Right? And you can see that that's automatically being put out for me. Right? How many of you knew that? Good? You like? Good. Continue. Of course, you can do this for other things as well. So I can do HTML. So I can come here and say inject language reference HTML. And there is also the ability to do it with, you can also do regular expressions. So let me go and say check Visa. So here, for example, I have regular expressions. But for IntelliJ, this is just a string. I can just say inject language reference regular expression. And now it will interpret that as regular expression. And then I can also do check regular expression. Right? So if I do that, for instance, or I can say, so this is a typical Visa card that has to start with 4. So if I put a 4 there, it validates it. If I add another digit, it doesn't. Okay? So that normally what you do is regular expressions, you search on Google and you paste. Because I made a promise to myself to go to my grave not learning regular expressions, and I'm still hoping to stick by that. Okay. Right, so that's a little bit working with the editor, etc. Let me show you some things around completion. So buffered, let's see, big mighty class. Okay, so. Oh, I love my little politically incorrect references here to countries and stuff. I'm from Spain, so I can criticize as much as I want Spain. Okay, so here's a buffer new reader, and let me show you how you could basically do this. If you say buffered reader equals new, and now get completion, and that gives you basically everything there is, right? You don't use completion as much. You should use smart completion. Smart completion is going to limit it down to what actually makes sense. Yeah? If I have a buffered reader, only certain things I can create instances of, right? And also, this is already done, but I'll remove this for you so that you can see. Make sure that when you do, for example, file new reader, often also people lose this and they're like, ooh, how do I get access to that information? You don't delete this and do that again. You can press Command P to get parameter info, right? And in fact, here also what you could do is, well, no, I'll show that in a second. File reader, so I say abc.txt. That gives you Alt-Enter to add exception handler to it. So you kind of let IntelliJ work the completion for you. Okay? So that's smart completion or smart typing. Then you also have the ability to, for example, if I do singleton, you can import singleton. So you can do imports also. You can do double or second completion. So for instance, let's say I have a string lines. I could do reader, and if I invoke it again, it will say reader dot read line, which you wouldn't do like that, but anyway, it allows you to basically chain methods and smartly allow you to do second completion. So that's invoking the same completion you just invoked, invoke it a second time. Also here, let me see if we, for example, going back to this buffer reader, new buffered reader, and does this take, well, it doesn't. It takes, so if I press, no, never mind, I'll show you in a second. Okay, what else? Hippie completion. So how many of you have heard of hippie completion? Right, so let's go to, where was that? That was in person, I think. Person. So, hippie completion, if I type T and then press hippie completion, it will loop through all of the things that match that T, right? So if I write teller, it basically is going to do the same thing, right? It's going to go through each of the different ones, and that's with alt slash, okay? Of course, there's also templates. So if you're familiar with templates, you go to live edits, live templates, and here you can basically create your own set of templates. So for Kotlin, for Java, for anything you want other. So PSVM is the one that spits out the public static void method. These are placeholders. End has a special meaning, but you can add as many placeholders here as you want. So you can see that basically each of these are placeholders and variables. You can edit these variables. You can instantiate them. You can give them values that are already being instantiated. You can apply macros to it, all of these things. And then you can spit all this out with templates. So Command J, and that gives you templates, right? Now, in addition to templates, you also have surround templates. So for instance, if I have this buffered reader, or let's go down to here, over here. So I don't know. I want to wrap this inside a try-catch for whatever reason, right? So what I could do is invoke the surround with and then say try-catch, and that would wrap that inside this try-catch. Okay, so it's the basic same concept of live templates, but with surround templates. And now there's also another thing that we introduced, which is called postfix completion. So for instance, let's go ahead and create a person, which you could do with introduce variable, I know. Oh, here's another completion. Shift command enter, right? Did you see what happened? Shift command enter. So I inserted a semicolon using 3 keys instead of 1, which is awesome. No, that actually does more things. So for example, if person equals null, it will complete the statement as well, right? The semicolon thing you can also fix. If you don't want to, you can use a language such as JavaScript, which semicolons are optional. Then you can go to Hacker News and argue about when they're optional. So let's say I just did if person equals new whatever, but I forgot to do the if person is null, do this. So postfix completion allows me to call it in reverse. So I can just say not null and then call it in reverse. Did you see that? So I said person, instead of saying, oh, I forgot to write if it's not null, I can just invoke postfix completion and it will do it for me. Okay? Are you still picking things up? Yes, good. Okay. Right. Now, a lot of these things are also available for different languages. So, for instance, I can go to Emmet here, and this is HTML. I could say, for example, I have a paragraph here. We also have already now, it automatically changes, so you don't have to do that. But if I say, for instance, I want to wrap this div inside a div, I can select this div and then also invoke surround template and say surround it with another div. So, and a lot of these functionalities work in different places. In HTML, of course, we also have Emmet. How many of you use Emmet? Right? So if I want to do, for example, UL and then LI, what I can do is just press Control-D a bunch of times, or I can use what's called like the CSS completion. So let's say I want a div, and I call it my div, and then inside this I have UL, and then I have LI times 5, hit tab, and I get that same thing outputted. Right? And it works with 550 as well, and it works with 500 as well, and it works with 5,000 as well. No, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, so most of the things that I show are available for different types of languages. And in terms of the completion, if you're doing JavaScript, so we provide support for JavaScript with the Node.js plugin in IntelliJ. So you get all of the completion for AngularJS, you get it for all of these different things. Now, there are times, sometimes that you don't want us to provide completion for libraries or files that are included in the path. For example, the Node modules subfolder sometimes doesn't need it. And what you can do is go to JavaScript libraries. Don't I have the thingy installed? Well, I can show it a different way. JavaScript libraries, and then add these as external, and then that way it tells IntelliJ not to worry about this in terms of analysis and things like that. So that's what the external ones are. The ones that you add here are the ones that it will invoke for completion, etc. Okay? So again, I'm focusing a little bit on IntelliJ given what conference we are, and sorry, Java, what conference we are, but a lot of the functionality is pretty much available for other things. Now let me switch over and show you a little bit of like navigation analysis. So for example, if I go to operation time interval, from here I can, for instance, go to command B or command U, and that will take me to the super method, etc. Then let's say, for instance, I don't know, let's go up here and hold on, what do we have here? Observable, right? So Alt Command B, that will give me all of the different implementations of observable. Again, here on all the windows, basically you can search in IntelliJ. You don't have to do any manual scrolling. And you know, there's a lot of different ways to navigate back and forth. So you can go to superclass, you can go to the type class, etc. So in observable, for instance, there's also something that people rarely, I find that they use, which is the type hierarchy. So that gives you a hierarchy of the actual type. If you go to a method, for instance, let's go to lift. On the method, you can also get the type hierarchy, which is Shift Command H. So that gives you the same thing, but for method hierarchies. Okay. Sometimes when you're in the actual file, you can press Command F12 to give you a pop-up of the structure, right? Which is a floating thing. So I can say, for instance, long count and go directly to that without having to do the symbol lookup. Of course, you can always have that present as well by pressing Command 7. So that's also just basically docked, or I normally use the pop-up. I never really have it docked there. Okay. Now, as you can see here in IntelliJ, one of the things we have, oh, by the way, this thing here is very annoying. You see this? Navigation bar? It's great because I can select it and I can actually create new files and everything, but again, it takes up valuable space. So what you do is you switch it off, and if you ever want it, just invoke it. And then you can just invoke it from here, and from there you can continue to create files and everything. Okay? I just saw that and I forgot to tell you about it. So inspections. You can see that, you know, one of the things that IntelliJ does is tell you or warn you about all of these different types of inspections that you have. And if you go to inspections here, and if you know how to type, you see that we have a whole bunch of different inspections. And you can switch these on and off. A lot of times when people come to IntelliJ, they're like, stop babysitting me. Stop telling me this shouldn't be done or that shouldn't be done. I like my code to throw null exceptions, right? So you can switch these off, and you can customize them, and you can adapt them to different projects. And you can add to these, obviously, as well. You can add to these in you know, creating plugins, and I'll show you in a different way now as well. But basically, all of these, you can switch on and off. You can set the severity level. You can define the scope, where it's applicable, etc. And these now show up individually here. If you right-click and select Go to Next Problem, it will show you all the hints, tips, suggestions, etc. If you just say high priority problems, it will only navigate to the next actual error, what IntelliJ considers an error. So when you use the next highlighted error, next previous highlighted error, that will only go through errors. It won't go through suggestion, hints, etc. So you can also run inspections. So you can just say run inspections, and you know, basically run the entire, where is it? run the entire inspection, inspect code, and what that will do is basically run the inspect code for you across the entire project, apart from seeing it at an individual level. But often you might want to have one of these inspections off, but you might want to invoke it. And you can do that by saying run inspection by name. And then there you type the name of the inspection. And then you can say, for example, questionable name. And what that will do is analyze what it thinks are weird names that you probably shouldn't be naming your variables, like A, B, C. Okay? So even though you have those inspections off, you can actually run them manually if you want. Okay? Now, as I said, you can also extend this. You can extend this via plugins, but there's also another feature that rarely is used, which is called structural search and replace. How many have heard of that? So what structural search and replace does is basically allow you to search for code based on a template. So it's kind of like a powerful regular expression combined with placeholders for live templates, etc. And what I'm basically doing here is I'm defining a template where I say, try and find all places in my code that have empty catch exception blocks, which we all know isn't the greatest thing. And each of these you can then edit the variables and define different values and say, you know, what type does it inherit from, etc. So if I hit find on this, you can see that it'll go throughout my code and says, look, here you have that issue. But also notice that this is underlined, right? And if I click on it, it says to me bad exception handling. And also I get the little light bulb. If I hit Alt-Enter, it says replace with do something. Because effectively, what I'm doing is just eating exceptions. And that's not the best thing. So how have I incorporated that custom analysis? If you go back to the inspections, and you do structural search, you can see that you can actually add these patterns and set the severity levels, right? So if I set this pattern, I also can provide a replace template. And that replace template effectively IntelliJ interprets as an Alt-Enter quick fix, as an intention. So what this means is that you can create your own structural search that looks through your code base, that looks for potential issues that your code has, and find common problems. Okay? So you get new people joining the team, they may be juniors, they don't know about certain patterns, you don't want them to do that. A lot of this can be caught using automated systems without having to do manual code reviews. Okay? And of course, it's always good to teach people, so in addition to saying, you know, replace with this, say, replace with this, come and ask me why I'm telling you this. Joke. No. Not working. Actually, in ReSharper, we have, when you hit Alt-Enter, we have a very cool feature which says, why is ReSharper suggesting this? And then when you hit that, it goes to a wiki page, and it tells us why, like, because of this and this and this. We don't have that in IntelliJ yet. Okay? Now, beyond kind of like the inspections, what you can also do is, let me show you JUnit. So here, there's a couple of other kind of like interesting things that you can do. If I go, for example, to comparison failure and I select expected, there's an analyze menu, which I found a lot of people don't use, and there is analyze data flow to here and from here. And basically what that is saying to you is analyzing where the variables are being read, where the variable that you're on is being set. Whether it's for a method, whether it's for a property, whether it's for a variable. It analyzes that for you and shows you all of the different places where this is being read and being set. And that's very good to kind of understand the flow that's going on. The analyze menu, of course, has other things like the dependency matrix that basically gives you a nice, beautiful dependency matrix and analyzes the entire project for you, and then you can see all of the different dependencies, any potential cycles, where the users are, etc. And there's also a plugin written by Baz, one of our colleagues, which is called the Metrics Reloaded, right? And you can download this as a plugin, and then if you do calculate metrics, it basically provides you with a whole bunch of metrics that you can calculate. So it's got a set of predefined ones, and you can click the box and select your own metrics, define your own kind of values, and then hit run. So let's say, for example, JUnit testing metrics, hit OK, and then that will run some metrics on the project and show me like package metrics, module metrics, project metrics, etc. And there's a whole bunch of different metrics that supports. You can install that. As I said, it's called Browse Repositories, and it's called Metrics Reloaded. There you go. Okay? How many of you use that? Right. Cool. So, how many of you work with databases? Right. How many of those are MongoDB when I said databases? Okay. Some people don't consider Mongo a database, but I'm not commenting on that. Right. So we also have support for basically SQL stuff, right? In databases, so if I click over here to, let me open this up, IntelliJ code samples. So query completion, for instance, here, right? I'm not judging anyone for putting SQL statements in strings, right? So let's just put that aside and pretend we're not talking about that. But if you do these kind of things, there is completion. You can get all of that hooked up. Then you can basically come here and hit Alt-Enter and say, run query in console, and that will run the query in console for you and say to you that the library is used incorrectly and blow up for me. Oh. If the first time fails, just do it again. So you get all of this information here. So, you know, we provide good support. And if I click here and say Control F6, rename to not a resource, you can get basically refactoring across your entire code base and across the database. Okay? So use the built-in tools that we provide for that kind of support with databases. We actually created a new product out of this, which has a very weird name, which is OXDBE, which won't be the final name, hopefully. And that basically gives you all of the database functionality in a simpler IDE. Okay, working with version control, some quick tips and tricks there. How many of you use Git? The majority of people use Git, right? So we support all of the different version controls. But let me switch back a second. I'm not going to go through all of the things that we support in version control, but just some things you might not be aware of. If you come here and select the version control, you can see that you have a log, and it represents all of the different check-ins, etc. I'm using Git here. You can select two different things, press Control-D, and see differences on those two commits. You can actually also, for instance, if you switch on Annotate, you get annotations of who made changes, etc. here. So I can bring this down. And let's say, for instance, I come here, and that's an annotation here. I can right-click here and say copy revision number, and then select that revision number, put it here, and it will show me that exact revision number in the actual log, right? And you can say I'm biased or what. I came from Visual Studio. I was really reluctant to using integration inside tools. For many years, I refused to do it with IntelliJ. I kept dropping back to the command line. But at some point, I picked it up, and I have to say that, in general, I'm pleased with it. You have all of the commit message box. So, for example, I can come here and say random nonsense, and then hit commit. Here you can do like the commit. You can run, reformat code, rearrange code, optimize imports, do all of the code analysis, check to-dos, etc., do uploads, all of these things, and then you can do a commit and push, create patch, etc. So all of this is possible. We've even added the feature that during the commit you can do a diff, and during the diff you can even edit the files without having to switch out of the context of that dialog. Directly in that dialog do editing. Then, of course, with the log here, we also have support for cherry picking and a whole bunch of things. But this is kind of specific to Git, so I don't want to delve too much into that. Okay. Let me just show you some things with debugging code that you might not very much be aware of. So here I have a person debugger. Right. So here we go. Okay. So here I have Java 8, lots of lambdas, looks beautiful. In 5 years, we'll be maintaining that stuff. And I've got a list of people, etc. So if I set, for instance, a breakpoint here, and if I hit debug, well, you know what's going to happen. But before I do that, right-click here. How many of you have ever right-clicked on that? Okay. And clicked on more? Substantially few. So if you click on more, you get a whole bunch of options. So you can like set a breakpoint conditionally. You can log messages to console, log evaluated expressions. You know, all of these different things. You can create groups of breakpoints, enable those breakpoints at a group level, disable them at a group level. A whole bunch of different things that you can do there. Then what you can also do is if I come here and see if I set a breakpoint, we've got a new feature. It says, what do you want to break on? Do you want to break on the entire line, or do you want to break on individual lambda expressions there? Right? Ooh, wow. First sign of emotion, 6 minutes left to the end of the talk. Thank you. Well, at least I feel a little bit better about myself. And you can actually come here as well and do run and debug, right? We've got the little gutter thing. So if you hit gutter here and I start to debug, you can see that it debugs everything. If I do a step into, so let's do this again. If I step into, you can see that I'm stepping into the different lambdas, right? And also notice, I don't know if you have noticed, that you get the inline variable, inline values, right? So you don't actually have to do hover over or anything like that. It already prints it out there for you. Okay? So those are some of the things. And then, of course, you can also do things like, I don't know, let's come here and let's force until they, well, okay, let me run this again. Don't know if you're aware of this one. Force run. So right-click here, and we can come to person list, and we can see all of these different person lists, and we can right-click on this and say show referring objects, and it shows all of the objects that are referring to that. So a bunch of things that often I find that people don't really use in the debugger that are also available. Okay. There is also the ability to right-click and say drop frame. So sometimes you've stepped one step too far, you can say drop frame and drop that immediate frame that you've been executing. We also have, I'm not going to show, but you also can now fully do evaluation of lambda expressions with code completion. When you do evaluate expression, you know, you get all of the code completion, anything you can, anything you want there, and list of people. You get all of that. You can even evaluate lambda expressions there. So use some of those features that we provide. Okay. In terms of refactoring, you notice that I didn't really mention much, because basically my only comment there is, you know, first see what IntelliJ provides you, right? First take a look at what it provides you, and then if it really doesn't, and then you looked up the help and everything, it says no, there is no way to do it, then what you do is try and do refactoring manually. But otherwise, most of the things are available. And what we also have is to basically press Control-T, look at the refactor menu, see what's there. If it's not there, ask us. If we say no, then do manual refactoring. There's support for, like, you know, we've even got the Lambda stuff now for Java 8. So, for example, if I come here, sample. Never mind. So you can convert for loops to collections with just Alt-Enter now. We've got that kind of Lambda 8 refactoring. But what I wanted to show is that things are context aware. So if I write context here, A, B, C, D, E, F, 10, right? And if I hit refactor this, or if I do extract variable, you can see that it extracts the entire screen, the string. But if I select the 10 and I do extract variable, it does a different thing. It extracts the integer. So be aware that some of the things are context aware when you're doing refactoring. Unfortunately, in ReSharper it is, but in IntelliJ it isn't. Control-T doesn't limit your, it offers you everything, and then if you try it in that context and it's not possible, it says it's not possible. In ReSharper, we actually limit it to what exactly can be done in that context. Okay? And last, before we finish off, let me just mention some things. Gradle and Maven, we have support. The only issue I sometimes find is with the refreshing of the dependencies. That's often an issue, but what you can do is normally if you just go to Gradle window, this is an issue that, this Maven project. Do refresh or hit download, and that normally takes care of things. We do have some tools. If you're a die-hard terminal person, you can get terminal, Alt F12. You can have multiple tabs in the terminal, so all of that is there. There's also the RESTful web service, which allows you to basically do any calls to any endpoint, HTTP endpoint, do get, post, put, delete, cookies, response, all of these different things are available from there. When you're working with version control, you can normally press Control V to get a quick list of menu options, which are things that you normally work with when you're doing version control. These quick lists are actually customizable. Sorry. You can actually create your own quick lists. If you go to Preferences and go to Quick List, I can create my own quick lists, and inside those add elements, and then I can go to Key Map and then look up my actual quick list and also assign a menu shortcut to it, right? So you can create your own little menus with all of the little things that you want yourself and then use those. One thing that you do especially if you're doing like pair programming or you're working with other people, sometimes you switch machines and the keyboard bindings that you have don't coincide with the other ones. You don't go through preferences. We've got a quick switch menu, which always remains the same independently of the keyboard binding, Control tilde, and that allows you to quickly switch things. So I can say key map and then say, for example, Emacs, right? And quickly, without any more dialogues, it switches the keyboard binding. And it does that for a bunch of other things like color scheme, Darkula, default, etc. And a lot of times you've noticed that I've used this keyboard combination, Shift, Command, A. Remember that one, right? That is when you don't know the keyboard binding for something, you can look it up by name. So rename, and it will invoke it. It's basically an action lookup. And it also sometimes says the quick shortcut key for it. So for example, refactor, you can see that it shows you the keyboard shortcut for it. So it's a good way to look things up, and also if you don't remember it, just do it. So I say, for example, structurally search, and I invoke structurally search, okay? Search structurally, right? So remember that keyboard shortcut. There's also a thing here called the help menu. I know nobody ever goes to it. And there's the default key map reference, which gives you one of these. And we've got a whole bunch printed at the booth, so if you want one, come and pick it up. And there's this other thing here, which I promise you that probably no one has ever gone to, which is called, I don't even know what it's called. Yeah, Productivity Guide. How many of you have seen that? Right. You probably imagine it's going to go to a website. No. It opens up a dialog box that shows you a lot of the things that I've been showing you, and it also tells you how many times you've used it and when you last used it, right? So for instance, I can come here and say 79 smart type completion. It explains to you what that is, it shows you how to use it, it tells you when you used it and when you last used it, right? I could have just started with that and then you could have all left. But not everything is there, okay? And one thing that I promised not to show, because they said don't show it, it's still experimental, but I'm going to show it anyway, is how many of you know about the registry in IntelliJ? So if you do Shift Command A, type registry, this secret dialog box opens up. And this is like low-level settings that support don't want you to mess with, right? Because if you start to touch these things, things might go wrong. One thing, I think we blogged about this already, is the zero latency typing, which is a new feature that we've been working on in IntelliJ 15. Hopefully it will make it, which basically reduces the typing latency that you've had or experienced sometimes even more. by using certain different mechanisms for locking the canvas, etc. There's a blog post about it recently my colleague did. You can go read it. So this is how you can switch it on and off. But it's experimental, okay? And that was very, very hidden. Okay? So with that, we're more or less done. Time is up, as it says here in red. So if you do have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and I'll also be at the booth for the rest of the day. Thank you.